हितं यदायुः ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः. Let us pray together. We offer our salutations to the all-loving being who endows all beings with consciousness. We meditate on the Lord, who is the origin of the universe. Lord, thou abidest in all. Thou art all. Thou assumest all forms. Thou art the origin and goal of all. Thou art the self of all. Thou art existence, knowledge, and bliss. Salutations unto thee. May the world be peaceful. May the wicked become gentle. May all creatures think of mutual welfare. May their minds be occupied with what is spiritual and abiding. May our hearts be immersed in selfless love for the Lord. Peace, peace, peace be unto all. Dear friends, we have amidst us a very illustrious speaker, Swami Sarvapriyananda, and you know the conditions prevailing due to two viruses. One is the prominent one, the coronavirus, the primary one, and then the coronavirus has also prompted another virus called panic virus. So both of them have caused such low attendance, and we'll go by the guidelines given by the government and others. I request that keep social distancing, physical distancing to avoid getting infected. We have put the signs on the TVs, all that signs and directions which have been given by CDC. So it will be good for everybody to abide by it. Swami Sarvapriyananda, most of you know him here. He is a monk of Ramakrishna order and was initiated into sannyasa in 2004, am I right? Yeah. And having worked in educational institutions of our order and also being a teacher at our training center, monastic training center, probationers training center to be exact. He was sent to United States first at Hollywood, and now he is the minister in charge at the Vedanta Society of New York. So I am very happy that he agreed to come on today's occasion, and initially I was not going to be here, and so I had the courage to ask, hey, can you come to substitute me? And he readily agreed. But as the turn of events took place, that it is, I also am getting the opportunity to listen to his lecture in person. So he will be speaking the Atman, a philosophical meditation. So before taking much of your time, I request Sarvapriyananda to begin his talk.
Om Asato Ma Sadgamaya Tamaso Ma Jyotirgamaya Mrityurma Amritam Gamaya. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Om, lead us from the unreal to the real. Lead us from darkness unto light. Lead us from death to immortality. Om, peace, peace, peace. I offer my pranams to revered Maharaj and my gratitude to him for inviting me here again. It's always a pleasure to come to the Vedanta Society here in Providence. I had initially thought that what we'll do is, one of the things that we are studying at Harvard, some of you may know, some of you do not know, that there's a special program at Harvard University for Hindu monastics. So the first batch, I am there as a part of the first batch. So it's an interesting program. And many in this country and in India too would not be aware that we're actually studying Bhagavad Gita in the Harvard University. And we are studying it with the commentary of Madhusudan Saraswati. We know that the Bhagavad Gita has been a central text of Advaita Vedanta, for a long time, and many great masters have written wonderful commentaries on it through the ages. Shankaracharya, even before Shankaracharya himself remarks that there were other commentaries before him, but those are not available to us. The first major commentary and one of the most significant commentaries was Shankaracharya's commentary about 1400 years ago. But then we also have Ramanujacharya's commentary and Madhvacharya's commentary and many others. In the line of Shankaracharya, there are other masters who have written commentaries on the Bhagavad Gita, one of them being Madhusudan Saraswati, who is one of the greatest post-Shankara Advaitins, about 400-500 years ago. He's a contemporary of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, Sri Chaitanya's contemporary. And so he is very well known for his book, the Advaita Siddhi, which is one of the toughest books ever written. One of the toughest books on Advaita Vedanta, but in general, very subtle, very intricate, and monumental work of intellect, of dialectics, defending non-dual Vedanta against attacks by his dualistic opponents. But he wrote a very beautiful commentary on the Bhagavad Gita called Gudhartha Deepika, the lamp of hidden knowledge, or the lamp of profound meaning. And that's what we are actually using to study it at Harvard. And I thought that we could dwell on some of the verses dealing with the Atman, the self, the important ones which you find in the second chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, what Madhusudan Saraswati is doing there. I thought we could discuss that. But luckily for you, I'm not going to do that, because it might be a little dry and boring also. Actually, it isn't, but I decided instead to step back a little and look at the big picture instead. So last week we had an interesting event. Was it last week or this week? This week only. We had an interesting event at Harvard, Vedanta for the 21st Century. You will see it online on YouTube maybe by next week. But because of social distancing and so many these new measures in place, more than 200 people were supposed to attend. It was cut down to 20. And all the chairs were spaced out like 6 feet apart, and also it was very interesting. Cyrus Mehtaji was there attending. One thing was that we only had 20 minutes to speak, each speaker. And so what I had thought about, I didn't quite get, my fault, I didn't plan well enough. So I didn't get enough time to go through what I wanted to share. And now, I have a captive audience. So, and some time. So what I'm going to do now is 3 big ideas about the same subject, the Atman, which I would, and in a contemporary context, today, in the 21st century, I would like to share these 3 ideas with you. But I won't take up all the time. I'll move fast, and then I'll stop. So if you pay attention and listen carefully, have questions ready, I would be interested in what you have to say. Comments, questions, reactions. All right, so 3 big ideas, very quickly. First big, all of them are really big ideas. The first big idea is an Advaitic theory of religion. In science they talk about a grand unified theory, all the forces unified, and so one equation to explain everything, things like that. So an Advaitic theory, a grand unified theory of religion. What is that? One advantage of Advaita Vedanta is the central teaching of Advaita Vedanta can actually be put very simply. quite straightforward in one sentence. In fact, in less than one sentence. Advaita Vedanta, the best explanation they say is silence, but then the Swami will not invite me again if I stand here silently. The next best explanation is Om, just that powerful mantra Om, and it can be explained as the entire teaching of Advaita is packed into it. But the next best explanation, if you expand a little more, not silence, not just Om, but a little more, one sentence. So the great Mahavakyas, the profound sentences which you find in the Upanishads. That thou art, tat tvamasi. You tell me in one sentence what is this Advaita Vedanta, non-dual Vedanta, what is the core of your teaching. You can easily do that. That thou art, tat tvamasi. And the general, so the explanation is also not very difficult. That stands for God. In a very general sense, the God of religion, God whom we worship in religion, that. Tat actually means that. So that stands for God. Tvam stands for the individual. You know, and this sentence comes from the Chandogya Upanishad, where Shvetaketu's father is saying this to Shvetaketu. Tat tvamasi, that thou art. Thou means Shvetaketu, the individual, us, each of us. So you are, literally if you translate it, you are God. That thou art is, thou art God. Obviously it's not true. I am this little being. How can I be God? That's why the dualistic schools get wild when you say these things. It's blasphemous. How can you identify yourself with God? And Advaita Vedanta also has, says that the direct meaning does not work. I mean, there's a lot of dialectics, a lot of philosophical inquiry which goes into explaining the meaning of this sentence, but basically what it means is this. God is defined as consciousness with the upadhi. I won't explain upadhi right now. Consciousness associated with Maya, let's say. Consciousness associated with the power of Maya is God, that. Consciousness associated or limited by ignorance, avidya, or a part of Maya is thou. We are the same consciousness, but limited by, Sanskrit is very powerful as a philosophical language. In one short sentence, you can say so much. What I'm trying to say here, let me say it in Sanskrit and I'll see if I can translate. What is that? What is God? How do you define God in Sanskrit? Basic definition, Vedanta Sara, the first textbook you study when you come into Advaita Vedanta. Samashti Ajnana Upahita Chaitanyam, consciousness associated by the totality of Maya. Maya or the totality of ignorance. That doesn't mean much to us. I won't go into the details. What is the individual, the jiva, sentient being? Vyashti Ajnana Upahita Chaitanyam. Consciousness associated or limited by individualized Maya. Another way of putting it is, consciousness in charge of Maya, the power of Maya, is God or Ishvara. Consciousness under the dominion of Maya. Mayadhisha, Mayadhina in Sanskrit. Consciousness under the dominion of Maya is us, each of us separately. If that also does not make much sense, don't worry. And this is not my, I'm not really concerned with that today. All they want to say is that the same consciousness appears as God and as individual in the state of ignorance. Once you realize who you are, you will see you are not this little creature of flesh and blood. And God is also not a distant ruler and creator and destroyer of the universe, something, a figure of belief. But you and God are one identical reality. And this is also not something very unique also. Mystics of all religions have had this intuition. The great Christian mystic Eckhart, not Eckhart Tolle these days, Power of Mountain, no. Meister Eckhart, the great German mystic, he said, he put it so beautifully. The ground of God and the ground of my soul are one and the same. Ground means the fundamental reality of God and my fundamental reality are one and the same ground. This is Mahavakya. Mahavakya means like Tattvamasi, like that thou art. Anyway, none of this is what I want to say. This is just background. What is the big idea? The big idea is this. This is something that we generally don't discuss in Vedanta. I found it in this teachings in Hindi of a sadhu in Uttarakhand, but very nice idea. I liked it so much. So I'm presenting it before you. See what you think about it. The religions of the world and spirituality, our individual spirituality, are broadly of two kinds. That-centered or that-oriented and thou-oriented. God-oriented and self-oriented. If you ask at our individual level, what are you doing here? Why are you interested in Vedanta? I would ask sometimes the young novices who came to become monks in the Ramakrishna order, why have you become a sadhu? What do you want? So broadly I got two kinds of answers. One answer was, I'm searching for God. I want to realize God. Another answer was, I want to know who am I. This attracts me. Who am I? Is inquiry. God is good, fine, but who am I? And you will find, if you ask yourself and take a survey here, you will find one of these it appeals to you more. So there are these two broad approaches to spiritual life. Big picture, when you look at the religions of the world, there also you find two kinds of religions. Again, I'm painting with a broad brush. There are the God-oriented religions. Christianity, it's about our Father in heaven and Jesus. Judaism, about Jehovah, the Lord. Islam, about Allah. Within Hinduism, there's a wide range of different flavors of theistic religions. Vaishnavism, Shaktaism, Shaivism, the worship of God. What is this God which all the religions worship? Almighty, omnipotent, omniscient, omnipresent, ruler of the universe, creator of the universe, upon whom the entire universe depends, who controls everything in the universe. These are some of the characteristics. And loving and beneficial and just, and a matter of belief. So this is the God-centered religion. As against this, there's another kind of religion, a self-oriented religion, centered on the person, on the self. This is something that is difficult to grasp here in the West. In India, it's not a problem. Here in the West, because people are used to Christianity and Judaism, and later on Islam also, which are all God-centered religions, therefore the idea of a religion without God seems very strange. Even now, when they talk about Buddhism, they still discuss here whether Buddhism is a religion or not. It's not a problem in India. In India, we know that there can be another kind of religion which is not a God-seeking religion or a God-centered religion. Buddhism comes to mind. There's no God there. Only Buddhism? No. Jainism also. It's not a God-oriented religion. Even within Hinduism, Sankhya philosophy. Yoga philosophy, Ishvara is there, God is there, but not the kind of God, the creator God, not like that. So yoga, Sankhya, Jainism, Buddhism, these are varieties of the spiritual pursuit minus God. Then what is it about? About yourself. Turning inwards and finding out an inquiry into yourself. Different answers are possible. But the common feature of these religions is that it's an inquiry into yourself, into the self. With me so far? So we have two broad types of spiritual pursuit. That-centered and thou-centered. Tat, tvam. Two kinds of religions. That-centered religion, tat, and tvam-centered religion, tvam-oriented religion. And now each of them has its advantages and disadvantages. What is the disadvantage, obvious disadvantage of the God-centered religions? The obvious disadvantage is it's based on faith. You cannot pursue a theistic religion unless you have faith. In fact, the name for those religions in the United States, in fact, the name for religion is faith. Unless one has belief to begin with, you cannot begin. You cannot sustain yourself. But the problem is, in today's day and age, this is under attack. Especially today. It was always doubted. There will always be skeptics. And even those who seriously pursued this path of seeking God would again and again be assailed by doubt. Does God really exist? In all of these religions, you will find theologians and philosophers who have expended a lot of energy in trying to prove the existence of God. Thomas Aquinas, 5 proofs of the existence of God. The great Nayayika, Udayanacharya, 9 proofs or 10 proofs of the existence of God. Why are they working so hard to prove the existence of God? Because it is doubtful. It can be doubted. That's why you have to put your effort for. Nobody tries to prove your own existence. 5 proofs for my existence. Nobody is interested. We know you exist. I know I exist. You all may not exist. I may be dreaming, but I exist. So, Descartes, the French, we know the Cartesian coordinates him, but he's a great philosopher also. And he's famous for the cogito ergo sum. I exist because I think therefore I exist. He started the position of radical doubt. Let me doubt whatever can be doubted. One thing I cannot doubt, and I can doubt the world exists. I may be dreaming. It may be nowadays virtual reality. Or I may be mad. I'm just imagining all this. Even my own body I may be dreaming, because in our dreams we dream our body. We don't dream that we are lying down on a bed. We dream we are doing things, and that things we are doing things with a dreamt up body. So our body also we can doubt. But one thing we cannot doubt, that we are doubting. If you doubt that, you are still doubting. So it just proves our thinking cannot be doubted. Am I thinking? That's also a thought. So he finally came to this conclusion that the self, the thinking self, cannot be doubted. Of course, Advaita or Sankhya would go a little further. It's not that I think, therefore I am, rather I am, therefore I think. It's an interesting topic, but anyway. God-centered religion, problem is doubt. That problem is not there in the self-oriented religion. Nobody in Buddhism or in Sankhya, the seeker, ultimate nature of self, different theories. But I, the seeker, that I exist, nobody doubts that. No, but even the person who's crazy also, may doubt the existence of everything, cannot doubt one's own existence. So, the self, inquiry into the self, that self is certain. The self is certain, cannot be doubted. That's the advantage of the self-inquiry based religion. That's why in today's world, for example, it's easy to attack God-centered religion, not so easy to attack, say, Buddhism or yoga. Because it's an inquiry into our perceived experience right now. Difficult to attack. And that's why these religions are very attractive today, especially among the more thinking people. But then, what is the advantage of God-centered religion and the disadvantage of self-inquiry based religion? I exist, no doubt about it, but my existence itself is the problem. I grow sick. I have desires which I cannot fulfill. I am afraid. Coronavirus. God is not afraid. God is the preserver, creator, preserver, and destroyer of coronavirus. What can coronavirus do to God? But it can affect me. I am afraid of disease. I am afraid of failure. I am afraid of pain. I am afraid of disappointment. I exist, but I am a frail creature, subject to so many limitations. So my certain existence, full of problems. God, on the other hand, is infinite, omniscient, omnipotent, perfect. No problems at all, except whether if exists or not. Doubtful existence, but perfect existence. And perfection, unlimited, infinite, but doubtful. We are certain, no doubt at all. We exist, but finite. These are the two God-centered and self-oriented or self-inquiry based religions. If you ask each of them what they think of the other, the answer will be very interesting. If you ask the God-centered religion, maybe a Christian or a Vaishnava, what do they think of Buddhism? Hey, this is atheism. How can it be a religion? I remember one Swami said, Buddhism is not a religion. It is a system of ethics and meditation. Psychology and ethics. It's a system of psychology and ethics. It's only half a religion. Without God, how can you have a religion? Godless. And if you ask the inquiry-based religions, Buddhists or Sankhya or somebody. What do you think about the God-centered religion? They are very gentle people. They will not make fun. But they will smile and say, what God? It's a fairy tale. What God? What are you talking about? Prove it. You can't prove it. Ultimately, you'll come down to some act of faith, some axiomatic belief system. So this is what they think of each other. If you look closely, their practices are also different. The God-centered religions generally, again I'm big picture only, generally there will be temples, churches, mosques, congregations, festivals, music. It's a generally devotional approach. Automatically it follows. If you are worshipping God, it has to be a devotional approach. It's centered on God. Love, surrender, devotion. If you, in contrast, notice a generally Buddhist or say a Sankhya or a yoga follower, it's more centered on the person. It's more meditative, more philosophical, more inquiry-based. General differences I'm making. Okay. What does Advaita have to offer here? So this is the point. This is the first point: the unified theory of religions. What Advaita Vedanta does is, it's interesting. That thou art. What the seeker of God finds in the God-centered religion, and what the inquirer of the self finds in the self-inquiry-based religions is one and the same thing. Whether you pursue by that path or pursue by this path, you will come to the same result. I mean, I cannot put it any better than a great Sufi mystic who said, when I searched for God, Allah, for God, I found myself. When I searched for myself, I found God. Sri Ramakrishna, in the Sri Ramakrishna teachings of the Master, he says, when man knows himself, he says, when man knows himself, he finds God. Manush nije ke chinle, Ishwar ke Bhagavan ke chine, Bhagavan ke paye. When one inquires into oneself, one finds God. What does it mean? That thou art. If I inquire into myself, I will find out the reality of myself. How will I find God? Unless the reality of myself is also the reality of God. So that thou art. What Advaita Vedanta does is this, that whatever you are seeking by that path and by this path is one and the same. And the beauty is this. Follow this carefully. The advantage of the God-centered religions is God is infinite. Disadvantage? Doubtful. Advantage of the self-inquiry-based religions is that certainty. Disadvantage? Limitation. What Advaita Vedanta does, here's the master stroke. It takes the certainty of the self-inquiry-based religions and the infinitude of the God-centered religions and brings them together in a certain infinitude. If you follow Advaita Vedanta inquiry carefully, at no point are you actually being asked to believe in anything. At every point, you're talking about experience. Experience plus reasoning, which are based on our own experience. If I had time, we could have talked about that. But think about it. Whatever Advaita we have studied, Avasthatraya, which are the inquiry based on the three states of our waking, dreaming, deep sleep. Or Panchakosha, which are the 5 layers of the human personality. Or Drigdrishya Viveka, the seer and the seen. All of them are based on our own experience. At no point are you asked to believe in something. It's certain. And slowly, if you follow that our own certain existence, if we inquire into it, following the methods set out by Advaita Vedanta, you see that this certain existence is actually not a limited existence. The limitation belongs to the body. The limitation belongs to the mind. You say, yeah, that's me. No, it's not. And that's the whole thing that Advaita Vedanta reveals. It shows you what you thought you were, the body and mind. You are not that. And the limitations, the problems, they all belong to the body and mind. And what you are, the infinite consciousness, that has none of those limitations. It's not subject to aging, it's not subject to illness, it's not subject to even mental states of elation or depression, whatever. So we come to an infinite certainty. It's an extraordinary point. I mean, it's something extraordinary about Advaita Vedanta. The more you think about it, the more stunning it is. The more you appreciate Advaita Vedanta, you begin to see that it's a fact. It's the greatest of all facts. Okay, so that's the first idea. Looking puzzled, good. The grand unified theory of religion. Two kinds of religion. Underlying them is this Advaitic idea of showing that they both point to that one reality. In both ways you can come to that same reality, but the Advaita approach is unique because it takes you to something that is certain and infinite. Think about it. If you have questions, we'll deal with it. Second idea, second big idea. Advaita Vedanta and the hard problem of consciousness. Recently at Harvard there was this number of talks, now sadly all cancelled, but 2 weeks ago this famous physicist, cosmologist, Brian Greene, some of you may have seen his famous Elegant Universe, PBS series, documentary. He's a cosmologist at Columbia University, but he's also one of those people who can really teach in a very effective way. You know, he's a fantastic communicator, which I did not know. I'd seen him on TV, but I got to see him live. And this is the beauty of a place like Brown or Harvard, you know, where the intellectual pursuit is truly treasured and valued. 400, 500 people packing an auditorium for just a book talk. So he came 2 weeks ago, his new book, Until the End of Time. Mind, Consciousness, and the Universe. Mind, Meaning, and Universe, something like that. It's a new book. There, he says in that book, by the way, he was not surprised to see me. Okay, why? He said that his elder brother became an ISKCON monk. And he said he had a lot of back and forth. They would have discussions about cosmology. He is an absolutely reductionist, materialist scientist, a physicist. And in the book also he mentions how they would have discussions about, literally about Vedanta, Vedas, and about modern physics and cosmology. And he says that, he goes so far as to say that, I would say that what Vedanta says is not science in that sense, but there's a poetic echo, that's the word he used, a poetic echo of what modern cosmology has found in Vedanta. And that he writes in the book also. Anyhow, the point why I'm raising him is, he went to Dalai Lama and asked this question: can spirituality, Buddhism for example, can it give anything to science? What is the question? Can Buddhism, spiritual traditions of the East, can they give anything to science? Are they relevant to science, modern science? And the Dalai Lama told him, and this is something that I agree, and that's why I'm raising this point. He said, as far as the external world is concerned, perhaps not. There we will look to you and your colleagues, the scientists, for insight. But as far as consciousness is concerned, there's a lot that, he said, Buddhism can contribute. I also say that. I agree totally. There is something that Advaita Vedanta, and of course other traditions like Sankhya especially, and Buddhism also, and contribute to the modern field of consciousness studies. This is my second big point. What can the Advaitic idea of the Atman do today? One is it can contribute to modern consciousness studies. Consciousness studies has taken off really in the last 20 years. It's become a big field. Very, you might call it a hot field. There are neuroscientists, there are computer scientists, there are physicists and linguists and philosophers and psychologists, multidisciplinary, cross-disciplinary field. What is consciousness? Now, in this, the most difficult question, if you Google it, you will find the hard problem of, so-called question of hard problem of consciousness. Very quickly, what is it and what can Advaita Vedanta do? Is this. David Chalmers, who is the head of the Mind-Brain Consciousness Unit at NYU, he coined this term, hard problem of consciousness. What is this hard problem? The problem is this. One is the so-called easy problems of consciousness. That is, when we have feelings, we have experiences, neurons in our brain are firing, and how you can correlate them. So the scientist will scan your brain, and if there is a pain, you feel a pain. Which neuron is firing? You taste coffee. Not one neuron, which bunch of neurons are firing? You feel an emotion, or you try to remember something. Which neurons are firing? So This is a science of correlation. Something is going on in the brain and something you are reporting. And what are the connections? That's one set of problems. It's a very promising field. But the other problem, the big problem is this. How can something physical have an inner state? How can something objective like this table have an inner state? There is no such thing in the universe. Everything in the universe, other than the brain, has only one state, an outer state, a physical state. Only one thing. It can be described in terms of physics, chemistry, biology. But not consciousness. One is the outer state, which any neuroscientist with the MRI machine and all can scan and find out. Brain and activity in the brain. Finally, what will you come to? What does the scientist come to? The last, the finest, deepest, most subtle physical manifestation is those activities of the neurons. Tiny electrical bursts in the neurons. That's the last thing that a scientist can find. Final thing. But beyond that is the jump to this inner subjective world which we all have right now. Thoughts, feelings, emotions, questions, ideas, seeing color, feeling cold or warm, tasting coffee, all of these inner experiences which we have. How do those little bursts of electricity in the brain, in the neuron, produce this? Are you with me in this? All of us have it. David Chalmers calls it this continuous movie which is playing in our mind, within us. Thoughts, feelings, emotions. But not only that, seeing, hearing, smelling, tasting, touching. Somebody comes, you open the door and the person walks in. You saw the person, you decided to help the person, you had a feeling of opening the door, all of these things. Go to the airport and the sensor will open the door for you. Does the sensor have all these feelings inside? Not at all. Any engineer will tell you, can give you in details what is happening in the sensor. At nowhere is consciousness involved. Then what is this we have got? How do you explain it? So is consciousness something unique, separate from the brain, acting through the brain and body? This Descartes. So what I did was, because of my interest in this, I took a course at Harvard University on the philosophy of mind, where they discuss mind and consciousness. Very interesting course. Their idea is, there is no such thing as consciousness. Why? What a crazy thing to say. We are all conscious right now. We all have subjective experiences. They're desperate to prove, no, you don't. There's no difference between you and a machine. No difference between you and the chair you are sitting on. Just you're a more complicated physical being, and the chair is less complicated. That's all. What has happened is this. Descartes, whom I mentioned. So for modern Western philosophy, the philosophy of mind basically starts with Descartes, who said, I am a thinking being. That I cannot deny. And after that comes body and the world. So he said a dualism. There is mind and there is matter. So so-called Cartesian dualism. And the rest of it, footnotes to Descartes, what has been going on in the 20th century and 21st century, there's a saying that, the history of Western philosophy is footnotes to Plato. I think Whitehead said that. So similarly, I can claim that I'm making up this thing now. The history of the philosophy of mind in the Western world, the series of footnotes to Descartes. What happened was, if you read the papers, you'll be stunned. All attempts to deny that we have consciousness, all attempts to reduce consciousness to body and brain or behavior. For example, let me give you an example. Pain. We feel pain? Of course. Along comes philosopher of mind, maybe someone like Gilbert Ryle, very smart people, Oxford University. He says, no. What is pain? When you have pain, what you do is, you say, ouch, and you make an expression, a face, and you react. That ouch, and that expression, and that reaction, that is pain. No, I have an inner feeling of pain. No, there is no such thing. Only that behavior is pain. Logical behaviorism. You may think this is crazy. Whom has it convinced? Did it convince you that you have no inner feeling, only the behavior? No. Nobody is convinced by this. Another group comes, the so-called identity theorists. They will say that consciousness is nothing but brain. Brain is producing consciousness. So certain brain states are there, neurons are firing, that is consciousness. Neurons are firing. If I see a red rose, neurons are firing in my brain. My experience is of a red flower, not of bursts of electricity in my brain. You, the scientist, are finding out the burst of electricity. How can you say the two are same? You can say one is causing the other, and you have to explain how. But they're exactly the same. How can you say that? No, it is the same. Why? What is absolutely obvious to ordinary people like us? Why do such smart people say such things? Of course, there's a pushback. Brilliant philosopher Galen Strawson has said recently that this is the silliest hypothesis. He says, the claims, the fanciful claims of religions are most reasonable when compared to this most silly hypothesis that we are not conscious. But why do such smart people say that? Because, he says, because of the overwhelming success of physicalism, of naturalism. Everything has been so far explained by physics, by chemistry, by biology. So the idea is everything is explainable by physics as we know it today. So matter is fundamental. Even consciousness has to be reduced to matter. Why? Because matter is fundamental. How do you know matter is fundamental? I will not go there. I will not even question that. So this whole question of this becomes the hard problem of consciousness. Pushback. Famous papers, we were studying them recently. Thomas Nagel, what is it like to be a bad? By the name of the paper itself, you can guess what the paper will be like. He says you cannot reduce consciousness to behavior or to brain. David Chalmers, hard problem of consciousness. If you look up, he has got TED Talks and all where he talks about this. So there's a big pushback now. And Galen Strawson put his, in a sort of cheeky paper, he says, hard problem of matter. He says, what to speak about consciousness? Actually, consciousness is most obvious. All the time we are conscious. In our consciousness, we are aware of matter. So the real question is, what is matter, not what is consciousness? And when you investigate matter, he says, matter is disappearing, vanishing before our eyes. Atoms, subatomic particles, quarks, superstrings. There seems to be no ground to it at all. He says the real mystery is hard problem of matter, not hard problem of consciousness. I mean, when I read this, I thought, this is nothing but the whole idea of adhyasa, which Shankaracharya says. Question is not about consciousness. Question is about the contents of consciousness. The things which are appearing to consciousness, what are they? That is the question. Hard problem of consciousness only because I have already imagined that everything is produced by matter. Brains are matter. Brains are producing consciousness. I cannot understand how a brain can produce consciousness, therefore a hard problem. But why are you assuming that the brain is producing consciousness? Okay. What can Advaita Vedanta contribute here? One simple thing I can say right now. Couple of things. Definition of consciousness. Big question. No commonality at all. Across the entire field, so many desperate attempts to define consciousness. Said, okay, big talk, Swami, can you define consciousness? Give you a perfect definition of consciousness. Very easy. This is from Padmapada Acharya, who was a disciple of Shankaracharya. Beautiful, elegant definition of consciousness, which you can apply right now. Almost every problem of consciousness studies will be at least clear. Clarity will be there. What is this definition? Anidam Chaitanyam, not this consciousness. Look at your own experience, our own experience, first person experience. Whatever you can categorize as this, it is not consciousness. It's an object. Let me repeat. Anidam Chaitanyam, not this consciousness. Consciousness is whatever you can categorize as this is not consciousness. Table, this table, not consciousness. Cloth, this cloth, not consciousness. Hand, this hand, not consciousness. Now even more dramatic, thought, this thinking which is going on, feelings, thoughts, these are conscious, because in consciousness studies these are all taken as, give me some evidence of consciousness, some examples of consciousness. Consciousness studies, they will say thoughts, feelings, emotions, ideas. Vedanta will say not consciousness. Why? This thought, this feeling, this idea, this memory. If you can say this, can you not experience it as this? Then it's not consciousness. It's an object to consciousness. That which is aware of these things, which is not an object, which you can never say this, and yet you cannot deny it. because without that everything will go dark. So that one is consciousness, and that is you. In fact, this definition is so powerful. If you persist in this definition, actually seek it in your own experience, you will become illumined. It will lead straight to Atma Anubhuti, Aparoksha Anubhuti. Consciousness is not an object. The great philosopher David Hume, he said, I searched for the self, but I did not find it. I just found a procession of thoughts, feelings, emotions, sensations, but there is no such thing as a self. Few hundred years before him, Vidyaranya Swami in Panchadashi, he says, you did not find it because you're looking in the wrong place. You did not find it because you're looking at objects of consciousness. That which is the witness of these objects is not an object. That which is aware of these thoughts, we're told Mr. Hume, that which is aware of the thoughts, feelings, perceptions, which is not objectifiable, that is consciousness, that is the self. This idea of a pure subject, which is not an object, this is not there in the modern field of consciousness studies. These are just a couple of ideas. One is consciousness, the definition of consciousness. Another contribution would be, very big contribution I think, would be the clear difference between mind and consciousness. This is a point where I find again and again top philosophers discussing it. We are studying their papers at Emerson Hall in Harvard University. They're tripping over themselves because of this. They move without a caution between consciousness and mind. So David Chalmers has, I will tell this and conclude as soon as possible. David Chalmers has proposed, what is his solution? He says consciousness cannot be explained by brain. Therefore, we must agree, we must think seriously that maybe consciousness is a fundamental reality. Matter, energy, time, space, and consciousness. Consciousness pervades the entire universe, but separate from it, and also a constituent of this entire universe is consciousness. It is called panpsychism, an old idea, but he has revived it now. Imagine cutting edge work by he has written his book, the textbook we are reading at Harvard is by David Chalmers. He's the editor of that textbook. What is his personal theory? Consciousness is all pervading. Of course, tremendous pushback. One pushback is, hey, what a silly thing. Consciousness is all pervading. Notice, now you will see where Advaita can contribute and where the fundamental confusions are. One of the serious pushbacks is, what do you mean consciousness is all pervading? What a silly idea. Do you mean my socks have opinions? My shoes can think? Notice, they're mixing up consciousness and mind. Opinions, thoughts, memories, feelings, these are all functions, vritti they call it in yoga philosophy. These are functions of the mind and they are objects. They are not consciousness. If consciousness shines on a mind, like here or there, then there are thoughts, feelings, emotions which are lit up by consciousness. But consciousness shining on an object which does not have an internal state, a sukshma sharira or a mind, will not have thoughts and feelings in. So these clarifications are something that Advaita Vedanta can easily offer. Is it happening? Yes and no. You'll be happy to know last year, New York University, the philosophy department, David Chalmers organized a colloquium, Advaita Vedanta and the hard problem of consciousness. Yes. The top analytic philosophy department in the whole world. I know in Harvard you're not supposed to stay there, Brown University, Harvard, but we have to admit, New York University really has a very good analytic philosophy department. And what are they discussing? Hard problem of consciousness, Advaita Vedanta perspective. A professor presented, she had come from Australia. Now, how did it go? Not too well. Some big people were there. I mean, some of the people whose papers we are reading now at Harvard, they were sitting right there. And they asked really tough questions. but I'll share this one thing with you. Tough questions, all of them are based on misunderstandings of Advaita. Easily resolvable. At one point, the professor who was presenting, one tough question came and she looked, Swami, you answered this. And David Chalmers said, no, you have to answer. You don't answer. If there was a question which I found tough, or any Advaita scholar would find tough, then there's something to think about. Anybody who has studied Advaita at a basic level also knows the answers to those questions. Which means Advaita Vedanta can, not only Advaita, many schools of Buddhism, schools of Sankhya, Yoga, they can contribute something important to the modern consciousness studies. So this is one big idea, consciousness studies and Advaita. The last one I'll say in 1 minute. I'll again run out of time, but I would like to speak with you a little bit. Arati is there? Okay. Let me just say a few things about the third. But we'll use time for Q&A then. So let me give the third big idea, Advaita Vedanta and ethics. How to use Advaita Vedanta applied to solve today's problems, an ethical world. Many people are interested in this. So some of the courses I took, Professor Amartya Sen is a very well-known figure, at least for Indians. I first time entered Emerson Hall at Harvard. This gentleman, I don't know where he had come from, not American, I think South American or Italian or something. He came and he said, "Oh, are you from India?" I said, "Yes." "Where from?" I said, "From Bengal." "Oh, you're Bengali. Do you know Amrita?" I said, "Amrita? Who is Amrita?" "The most famous Bengali on campus." I said, "Do you mean Amartya Sen?" Yes, come." And he dragged me to Amartya Sen's office, banging the door. He doesn't hear too well, you see. Thank God he was not there. But later I had the opportunity to go to his house and make his acquaintance, and I attended his classes on ethics. See, the whole wonderful teacher at this age. A lot of what he said I did not agree with, but anyway, but he's a very good teacher, excellent teacher. And you can imagine 20 years ago he would have been it would have been wonderful to attend his classes. But the basic problem is this. Why should I be good? Why should I do good to anybody else? And there are a wide range of approaches. All of them, the good thing to know is all of them have failed. There is a utilitarian approach, because being good, if you are moral, then total satisfaction or happiness of everybody, your happiness, the society's happiness will be maximized. If I'm careful, if I do the right thing and I wash my hands and I maintain social distance, the total satisfaction of the whole group that they will not get coronavirus, it will. So that is a utilitarian approach. But problems are there. Classic example, I must tell this story. What is the problem with the utilitarian approach? So there's something called the trolley problem. The trolley problem is, everybody knows in ethics. Professor Sen brought it up in the class. So a trolley is coming with people are there in the trolley, they're coming down the track, you're standing there, and you see the trolley will go and hit. There are no people in the trolley. The trolley is coming, but there are people standing at the end of the track. 10 people are standing there. It will go and hit them, and they don't see it coming, so they will die. But you have seen it coming. Now there is a lever, like you can change the track of a train. You're standing in front of the lever. There's just a couple of seconds to act. If you push the lever, the trolley will get diverted to another track. At the end of that track, 5 people are standing. So there 5 people will be killed. Here 10 people will be killed. Now what will you do? According to utilitarian ethics, you should pull the lever, let 5 people die, but 10 people will not be killed. According to utilitarian ethics. But you may have other kinds of ethics. There's deontological ethics. Deontological ethics, fancy word. See, one thing I learned at Harvard is not to be scared of fancy words. Behind it, the idea is basically very simple. Is that I believe it, duty. My religion tells me not to kill. So the trolley may go and do something, but I will not touch. I will not be responsible for the death of 5. I will not actually make the trolley go there and hit. Something else may happen, who knows? Trolley may get derailed or something like that, whatever. So what will you do? This is the question he asked. This is a typical question they will ask in they call it thought experiment. Now, because these kids are very smart, so they think out of the box. So one of the students said, neither. The professor said, what? Neither means. So both alternatives are bad alternatives. Both involve killing of people. As philosophers studying ethics, we are supposed to find out a better alternative. In this trolley problem, it might not be so, but the real world is not a trolley problem. You should always look for a superior alternative, not bad and worse. Good answer, actually. And then the story is this: Professor Sen said, "Let me tell you a story for this." He said, many years ago, the Pope, his memory is failing a little bit, he said that not this one, not the one earlier than this one, the Polish Pope, Pope John Paul II, yes, that one. He called us and he said they're going to write a papal encyclical. They write it in Latin, some message that the Pope has to give to the world. So they consult experts. So they called experts from different fields from across the world and economists. He said 3 economists were called, all Nobel Prize winners. Amartya Sen, he said he was one of them, and the other one was your very famous economist. He mentioned the name, I'm forgetting it. And one more economist whose name he said I will not mention. So the 3 of them went. And this third economist, whose name he did not mention, he said he went and caught the Pope and he said, Holy Father, capitalism is the best system, which has been proven. You must write it in your encyclical that capitalism is the best system and it is supported by God. So that is, you should put it there. Then Pope John Paul II, he caught the hand of that economist and he said, considering the suffering that humanity has been put through because of capitalism, I think the Almighty Lord in His wisdom can think of another alternative. And the other economist who was sitting there, whose name I forget, he was sitting there. He, on the breakfast menu, he had a card. He wrote on that, Pope 1, economist 0. The Professor Sen said, yes, that is the alternative. That we should always look for a more humane alternative in ethics. Anyway, what can Advaita Vedanta offer? Swami Vivekananda says that this foundation for which philosophers have been looking for, ethical philosophers in different countries and throughout ages, how can you ground ethics? From what can you derive ethics? It is provided by the oneness of all existence. Swami Vivekananda says this again and again. Because Advaita says we are all one existence. If you say religion tells me, my holy book tells me that to be good to everybody and that's the basis for ethics. But people who don't believe in your religion might say that that doesn't work for me. But this oneness, it's not that religion tells you that. It is something to be discovered by ourselves. It is claimed to be a fact. And based on this oneness of all existence, it does not mean sameness, but oneness of existence and all this diversity. When we come from that position of oneness and look upon this diversity, what do? Harmony. How do I live in this world? Harmony within the family, within the community, within nations, with nature. So this oneness of all existence is the foundation for ethics. Swami Vivekananda's ontological ethics. There's a beautiful article by Swami Bhajananandaji, who was a very luminous writer and thinker of our order, very spiritual senior Swami. He has written an article, The Ontological Ethics of Swami Vivekananda, where he has shown how Advaita in Swami Vivekananda's thought can be a foundation for ethics. I'll leave it at that. 3 big ideas. 1, grand unified theory of religions, that thou art. 2, hard problem of consciousness and Advaita Vedanta. 3, ethics and Advaita Vedanta. Tell me, what do you think? Maharaj has given 10 minutes extra, so we'll push it to 6:10 then. Thoughts, questions, observations? Yes, Maharaj.
What was told as Padmabhadacharya's definition
Yes.
of consciousness,
Yes.
it means that that which has no definition is consciousness.
Yet exists. Yet exists,
but
yes.
cannot be defined.
Cannot be defined as an object, yes. Yeah. Beyond all, Yes, because definition basically makes it objective. Yes, it cannot be limited. But there is a very sophisticated definition or indication given by Chitsukacharya. Aparoksha, it is said, avishayatve sati aparoksha vyavahara hetutvam. That which cannot be objectified and yet is the ground of, is a directly experienced ground of all experience. That means whether you're seeing, hearing, smelling, tasting, touching, all of them are based on consciousness. And yet that never becomes an object. So this hard problem of consciousness, today we are talking about it. If you Google, you'll find it, net is full of discussions. Thousands of years ago, Kena Upanishad starts with this. Keneshitam patati preshitam mana, kena prana pratama prayiti yukta, keneshitam vachamimam vadanti, chakshu shrotra kaudeva yunakti. Which shining being, notice the use, deva, which shining being, consciousness, illumined being, because of which shining being does my mind think? Do I have the experience of seeing, of hearing, of speaking? Notice, there's another philosopher, a mathematician, Marvin Minsky, who passed away a few years ago, well-known mathematician, I think at MIT, yes. He said there's no problem of consciousness. There's a bunch of problems. Problem of seeing, problem of hearing, problem of thinking. You're putting it in one basket. You don't understand. That's why you're calling it problem of consciousness. There's no such thing as consciousness. Notice this question in Kena Upanishad. He's not asking me, the question in the Kena Upanishad, he's not asking me for a bunch of lectures. Give one lecture on hearing, one lecture on thinking, one lecture on speaking. No. What is the one thing because of which all of these are experienced? Hard problem of consciousness. One thing at the background of all our conscious experiences. It's actually very simple, but because it's not an object, it becomes very difficult. What was I reading?
Therefore, in Kena Upanishad, the answer is also like that.
Answer is eye of the eye, shrotrasya shrotra, manaso manoyat, mind of the mind, eye of the eye, ear of the, paradoxically. The whole Kena Upanishad is paradoxical. Because it exists and yet it's not an object. Something was reading recently. Descartes himself is saying, he's puzzled. You can immediately give the answer. He says, there's no doubt about me. There's one certain thing I know, that I am a thinking being. That I cannot doubt. Yet, then he writes later on, yet I'm puzzled about one thing. All the things which I doubt, world, people, my body, I can doubt it. Yet I have clear experience of it. I can see it, hear it, smell it, taste it, touch it. But that which I cannot doubt, that I exist as a thinking being, that I don't have any clear experience of that. And he leaves it as a mystery. In fact, he says something interesting. He says, perhaps it is due, these are his actual words. So the first time I was able to read the sixth meditations of Descartes. Of course, translation. He says, perhaps it's due to the natural restlessness of the mind that it does not remain within, he says, bounds of truth. If the mind can be bound down in, like he says, if we are disciplined, then maybe it will be able to get a clear idea about oneself. He was not aware of the Vedantic approach and the yogic approach. What he's thinking about is the yogic approach. You know why he finds it unclear? What is his statement? The things which I can doubt, I have clear knowledge about. All these things. Things which I cannot doubt, I have no clear knowledge about it. How strange. Why no clear knowledge? Because he's looking for an objective knowledge of it. Can I see it, hear it, smell it, taste it, touch it, think about it, conceive of it, remember it, feel it? No, none of them. But that which sees, hears, smells, touches, thinks, feels, remembers, that one is you. There is an irresistible desire to objectify. These things are so clear in Advaita Vedanta. These are ABCs. ABCs in Advaita Vedanta. When I said certainty, I said the grand unified theory of religion, Advaita Vedanta again gives certainty to religion. And I was amazed to see David Bentley Hart. He is a Christian theologian. He has given a powerful reply. You know the famous atheists, militant atheists, Richard Dawkins, Christopher Hitchens, Sam Harris, Daniel Dennett, who have been attacking Notice, all of their attacks are on the God-centered religion. So this David Bentley Hart has given a powerful reply to them in a book, The Experience of God as Being Consciousness Bliss. Christian theologian. He's writing that the highest idea of the ultimate reality, which we find, he said, we find it most clearly in the Vedanta of India. But it is there in Christianity and Judaism and Islam, and he shows it's there in all religions. But the chapters of his book are very interesting. The chapters of his book, 3, 4, and 5. Chapter 3, Chapter 4, Chapter 5. Chapter 3, Sat, being. He uses the Sanskrit word, Sat, S-A-T. Chapter 5, Chit, consciousness. Chapter 6, Ananda, bliss. And he says, this is the answer to those who doubt and attack religion. The answer, the most serious answer that religion can give is the Atman idea from the Advaita Vedanta, God, the experience of God, consciousness, being consciousness, bliss. Yeah.
One more question.
Yes, Maharaj.
Maharaj, there are questions on web also.
On web, all right. But Maharaj first, yes.
That when you were saying that this scientist would say that, do you mean to say my socks has feelings? How do they know that this socks doesn't have feelings? Any proof of that?
No, they cannot. They cannot. Actually, that other people have feelings. How do we know that? Today we are discussing with Cyrus Ji on the way that if you make a machine exactly like us, you can talk and do all mathematical, everything, all activities, and better than us. How do you know that machine does not have feelings? Questions from the web, and this gentleman also had a question. Question from the web?
Yes. So first question, is it possible for artificial intelligence system to become conscious or develop conscious if they become sophisticated enough?
Right. On the way here from Boston to Providence, we were discussing this. Answer is both yes and no. Why? What do you mean by that? Understand what is meant by consciousness. When you ask the question, I'm almost sure, when you ask questions like, can machines become conscious? You're using consciousness in the sense of consciousness plus mind. You mean, and it's very natural, you mean just like ourselves. The way I am conscious, can a robot or an artificial intelligence, can it become conscious? I am feeling something inside, so does the robot feel something inside? So far, no. So far, even the top people at MIT and other people, nobody will claim that the machines we are making are conscious. They're not claiming. But is it possible at all in the future? In fact, this was one of the discussions we were having at the philosophy department at Harvard. Is it possible? What conclusion? No conclusion. In philosophy, you never reach a conclusion. Then, if you reach a conclusion, you're not a philosopher. Somebody said about Vivekananda, it seems, oh, I understood everything he said. He cannot be a philosopher. I understood all the words he said. All right. So, in the sense that, will it become conscious, sophisticated enough? Then the answer is there directly. If sophisticated enough means having a mind like ourselves. What do you mean by that? Vedanta will say very precisely, if Sukshma Sharira or something, if you can create an artificial Sukshma Sharira, if you can. Because consciousness is all pervading, like sunlight everywhere. If you keep a pot, will you have a little image of the sun there? No. But if you keep water in the pot, you will find the sun is reflected in a little shining image in the water. Right? So if the machine becomes sophisticated enough to have a mind like ourselves, remember we have distinguished between mind and consciousness. If it becomes sophisticated enough to have a mind like ourselves, consciousness is reflected in that. It's called Chidabhasa, a reflection of consciousness, and it will feel like us. Remember, consciousness, Vedanta makes very clear distinctions. Consciousness is not the same as intelligence. Intelligence is a part of the mind. Therefore, if you ask Vedanta, can you have artificial intelligence? Vedanta will say, of course. You can make a machine which is intelligent. So it's conscious? No. Consciousness and intelligence are two different things. But it's not just Vedanta which is saying that. Recently I heard very encouraging things. Our philosophers of science are now saying it. One professor said, you don't have to be smart to feel pain. So a little mouse or a cat, it may not have high IQ. Your computer can do many more things than that cat can do. But the cat can feel pain. It's conscious. It's not as intelligent as the computer, maybe. Or take even a mouse, less intelligent than the cat, but conscious. It feels pain. You don't have to be smart to suffer, yes. You don't have to be smart to suffer. Suffering, that first person experience, pleasure, suffering, requires consciousness. So answer to your question, is it possible that sophisticated artificial intelligence machines can be conscious? Yes and no. If you can simulate something like a Sukshma Sharira, then automatically it will be conscious. Otherwise not. And yet it can be very intelligent, it can have tremendous memory. All our computers already have these things today. They already have these things. Yes.
I have a question on ethics. So, killing a person is bad.
Yes.
But Arjuna was killing so many people. So, how do you explain that an ethics on that?
Killing a person is bad. Killing the coronavirus? You will say it's good. But from the point of view of the coronavirus, it's not good. Killing rats? Bad. In New York, the rat population is more than the human population. Yeah, so ethics is, as I said, complicated. But notice one thing. If the Atman theory is right, if Advaita is right, you are not actually totally destroying somebody even when, say, a soldier kills somebody or a doctor or a patient dies. The person is not destroyed. It's that living machine called the body which falls apart. That's one point. That's a point that Krishna made to Arjuna. So ethics will depend on what are you doing it for. If you're doing it for your own selfish ends, like Kauravas were fighting against the Pandavas for their own selfish ends, against religion, against morality, against ethics, then it's really bad. But if you are a soldier and you are fighting against, say, an evil regime, like, say, Hitler or the Khmer Rouge in Cambodia, then everybody will say you are doing something good.
So, next point is that in these circumstances is very clear. So, Hitler is bad. There is nothing confusion. But our daily life, suppose I am working with somebody and he's telling me lies and he's taking advantage. So, in that situation,
Should you kill him? No, don't kill him. Handle it. Definitely. You don't need Advaita Vedanta for that. Common sense, morality, strength. Swami Vivekananda said, what should the weak do when faced, like being bullied by the strong? Why? Thrash the strong, of course. Stand up for yourself. But Advaita shows you that you don't hate the other person. Why is that other person behaving badly? The same consciousness which I am is filtering through that particular mind where many samskaras are there. Somebody said, this is the same Atma everywhere. At Harvard, Mother Teresa and Hitler are the same. I said, yes. What? Yes. Tell me. When Mother Teresa was a 5-year-old girl and Hitler was a 5-year-old boy, was Hitler an evil boy? Was Mother Teresa a saintly girl? No, not yet. Not only that, every day, when at night, when Hitler goes to sleep and Mother Teresa goes to sleep, deep sleep, is Hitler evil? Is he thinking evil, murderous thoughts? Is Mother Teresa a saint? Is she thinking saintly thoughts and trying to help people? No. Wait,
Maharaj,
we have run out. Okay, one more web question and we'll end. We have got run out of time. We have got only
Three
one.
questions. One, at least you can take.
Yes.
Is Maya also like our own super consciousness?
Oh, they're all big terms. Maya, super consciousness, Yeah. I can only give a straight answer. Definition in Vedanta Sara. First sentence that we had to memorize as brahmacharis, as novices when studying Vedanta. The only reality is non-dual Brahman, which is existence, consciousness, bliss. Everything else, starting from Maya downwards, is an appearance. Vastu Satchidanandam Advayam Brahma Ajnanadi Sakala Jada Samuha Avastu. So no, Maya is not like Brahman. Maya is an appearance in Brahman. Alright, should we conclude now?
One more.
At least read out the questions,
if you
yes.
don't mind.
Read out a couple of questions.
Yeah. This is question related to in the course of time you told we don't need faith. So question is like this: how can we have experience without faith in Guru and incarnation? How can we have experience without faith in Guru and incarnation?
Repeat that.
You said we don't need faith. So question is, how can we have experience without faith in Guru and incarnation? You
Right.
said we don't need faith.
Complete the question. We don't need faith. I never said that. I said faith is necessary in the God-centered religions. It is absolutely necessary. It is based on faith. And look at the question. How can you have any kind of spiritual I hope he or she means spiritual experience. How can you have that spiritual experience without faith in Guru and incarnation? Incarnation, avatar, which kind of religion? God-centered. God-centered religion, of course you need faith. In Advaita Vedanta, don't you need faith? There also you need faith. I have this funny story. One Advaitic, one Vaishnava Babaji in Vrindavan. It works very nicely in Hindi, but I'll tell you in English and translate. Vaishnava Babaji, a worshipper of Krishna, decided enough of this Krishna and Gopala, I will become non-dualist. So he went to a non-dualist teacher. First they will start qualities of an adhikari. Viveka, Vairagya, all of these things, a list is there. Among them, the sixfold treasure, Shama, Dama, Upariti, Titiksha, Samadhana, Shraddha. Shraddha means faith. So when he said Shraddha is required, it's beginning to begin Advaita Vedanta. Then this Vaishnava Babaji said, in Hindi he said, यहाँ भी श्रद्धा तो मेरे प्यारे गोपाल जी क्या दोष किए थे? So here also you need faith. Then what harm did my Gopala do? Why did I abandon him? I'm going there. So in anything that you do in life, if you go to a university, in Brown University, and you listen to the teacher, there also you need a certain amount of faith that the teacher is not lying, that you are not dreaming, that the books are not fake news. That much faith you need at least. Yeah. Thank you so much. Om Shanti 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 Hari Om Tat Sat Shri Ram Krishna Arpanamastu. I would like to say that Madhusudan Saraswati, he wonderful combination of Advaita and Bhakti.
What is that great book on Bhakti?
Bhakti Rasayana, Bhakti Rasayana. So, great non-dualist, master non-dualist, and full of bhakti, full of devotion. So they are not contradictory at all.
That was a wonderful talk, and he has answered many questions, and he has raised also many questions which probably we didn't have time to ask or even finding the words to really phrase those questions. But think of this one sentence that will give us a direction to answer these questions. As he was telling, in many cases or most cases, the problem is because we identify mind and consciousness, and mostly that also identification happens unconsciously, that we do not realize that we are identifying mind with consciousness. And again, there is another step that he was mentioning, but he didn't, that the mind gets wrongly identified with brain. That also is not right. So, it was a wonderful talk, very good, and I suggest that it will be stored on YouTube. Many have been watching live, but it is worth listening again and again. And well, friends, let me make some announcements today, because there are so few people attending live. We will skip the this offertory collection, and there is the box. Those who would like to put, please put it in that box. It can take lot of money, so don't worry, that the box is small. You can, yeah. And after all, the size of a dollar bill is same as the size of a $100 bill, doesn't matter, So, the next Sunday, the topic is Karma Theory, and Professor Sukalyan Sengupta will be speaking on that. The Tuesday and Friday classes will go on. The Tuesday, again, Sukalyan Sengupta will be speaking this Tuesday and even next Tuesday. The topics are this Tuesday, Swami Shivananda, and next Tuesday, Swami Saradananda. Other programs like meditations and all, they will continue to happen as per schedule. It is true that there is all these precautions one has to take in this situation of coronavirus. It is ethical to kill it if you can, it is, or at least it is ethical certainly not to spread it. So it is, please take all those precautions. We were urged to cancel these programs, but our congregation is small and we are observing all these rules. So we have decided to continue with it, but emphasizing that these precautions must be seriously taken. So now with that, we'll have the closing prayer, and then there will be Arati. And as has been mentioned, because of that social distancing, we have suspended the soup supper. May the Divine, who is Father in heaven of the Christians, Holy One of the Jewish faith, Allah of the Muslims, Buddha of the Buddhists, Tao of the Taoists, Great Spirit of the Native Americans, Ahur Mazda of the Zoroastrians, and Brahman of the Hindus, lead us from the unreal to the real, from darkness to light, from death to immortality. May the all-loving being manifest himself unto us and grant us abiding understanding and all-consuming divine love. Peace, peace, peace be unto all.